Very good morning to all the participants at the Economic Times BFSI Conclave. Let me start by first thanking the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts on this very important topic. As the Indian economy recovers and several reforms have been launched to really accelerate growth in the GDP in this decade, especially reforms in the financial sector that were announced in the budget this year, the role of the BFSI sector becomes really critical in fostering growth in the economy. If you look at the countries that have grown very fast, credit has played a very important role, be it the in the United States under President Roosevelt, when under the New Deal, the East Asian economies, or even China, there's been significant expansion in credit, and that has really helped the growth in the economy. And in this, it is very important for credit expansion to happen at a consistent pace without the usual accelerator break phenomenon that has been the characteristic of the Indian financial sector ever since liberalization, where when the economy starts doing well, credit expands significantly. Oftentimes, in the process, the credit underwriting norms are relaxed, and as a result, the seeds for a crisis are sown during good times. So the pressing of the accelerator is what then leads eventually to the clamping down on the brakes, and then credit dries up. The usual phenomenon of bad assets mounting, especially on the large loans. As a result, risk aversion builds up in the banks, which then impacts credit offtake. Supply of credit goes down, and then eventually impacts the economy. And as a result, you have also demand for credit also going down, as when credit underwriting standards are lowered, companies and the borrowers end up becoming far more levered, very excessively levered, and that affects the demand of credit as well. So both supply and demand end up tapering down significantly. That's what happens as part of the break. So this accelerator break phenomenon that has been the characteristic of the Indian BFSI sector ever since liberalization, and we've had two rounds of crises, one in the late 90s and one before before COVID struck, the entire bad loans in the banks, and then which precipitated also and carried over to the non-bank financial sector. So this phenomenon is something that the BFSI sector needs to actually avoid if the if the credit expansion has to happen in a sustained manner to really push economic growth. Because after all, if you look at the the ratio of M3 to M0 in an economy, M3 is basically driven by credit, and therefore banks play a very important role in in effectively contributing to real sector activity. So in this context, especially I would like to highlight the importance of technology, for the BFSI sector, technology, data, analytics, etc., in being able to avoid this accelerator break phenomenon. If you look at banks during the global financial crisis as well, there is now a lot of research that has come in. Those banks and financial institutions that were very efficiently leveraging data and analytics, these were the banks where the bad loans were much lower, and at the same time the balance sheet expansion did not come under pressure as a result of the global financial crisis. In other words, those banks that relied a lot more on data, analytics, etc., were the ones that were able to actually not only withstand the crisis, not get have their balance sheets impacted, but were also able to really grow consistently and thereby contribute to the economy. So I think that is the objective that the Indian BFSI sector must have. I will use a parallel for the Indian BFSI sector, given that I am actually a big fan of cricket. I love using examples from cricket. if you look at the Indian BFSI sector, to me, it appears like the Indian cricket team of the 1990s, under Mohammad Azharuddin, which could boast a lot of victories at home, often on tailor-made pitches, but had nothing to noteworthy to talk about when they went outside the shores. Globally, they had nothing much to write home about. If you look at the the BFSI sector, it's similar. If you had some singleton achievements, for instance, Sachin Tendulkar actually going and scoring runs once in a while, a Kumble picking up wickets, etc. So similarly, the Indian BFSI sector will also say, oh, we've done this global financial inclusion, etc. But if you look as a team, the way the 1990s team had very little to write home about in terms of global achievements. Similarly, the Indian BFSI sector stands at a similar at a similar juncture. Let me give out some statistics that we had put out in the 2020 economic survey, and actually those facts remain relevant, even a year and a half later, which is that if you take the global, the top banks, top 100 banks, India has only one bank in the global top 100. And, for the size of the economy that India is today, we should have had at least 6 banks in the global top 100, some in the top 10 or the top 20. And yet the largest size bank we have Indian representation is State Bank of India at a 55th rank. And I think that is just not proportional to the size of the Indian economy. Similarly, if you look at the credit penetration, the ratio of credit to private credit to GDP at about 58% is 1/3 of the global average of close to 170%. Especially the OECD average of about 170%. So on the quantity side and on the size of the banks itself, there is just we are far too behind the global benchmarks. And even when you look at on the quality of bank loans, there are so many of our defaults actually which happen on the large ticket loans, which are oftentimes willful default, or maybe defaults that actually maybe do not get characterized as willful default, but in spirit are willful default as well. So we have a twin problem. One, on the other hand, penetration of credit actually to the common company, as SME or a common citizen is very, very low. And yet you have actually, large corporates and large borrowers, who end up borrowing but not repaying. And yet many times banks actually end up giving credit to defaulters as well. And, so this is we have a quantity and a quality problem as well in the BFSI sector, which needs to be fixed. Only then will this accelerator break phenomenon really stop in the Indian BFSI sector, so that our the sector can grow consistently and thereby contribute to the economy. This is especially now important given the emphasis on infrastructure. In his Independence Day address, the Honorable Prime Minister has outlined another 100 lakh crore of infrastructure building apart from the national infrastructure pipeline, which is already in progress. Now, so much infrastructure will actually require the BFSI sector to be able to come and participate and thereby learn how to do high quality lending in this without really suffering the problem of non-performing assets, crony lending, evergreening of loans, gold plating of loans, all the kind of problems that we have witnessed in the Indian financial sector over the last decade or so. So I think these are problems that the BFSI sector will have to grapple. It has to take the bull by its horns, cannot pretend that, that there are no problems. And I think there the cricket parallel actually, the Indian BFSI sector cannot be satisfied being the Indian cricket team of the 1990s. It has to aspire to become the Indian cricket team under Sourav Ganguly, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, or Virat Kohli as well, where they're actually going and really achieving global recognition. And I think it is not enough for the Indian BFSI sector to say, oh, we are great in India. I think given the size of the economy, 5th largest economy in the whole world, the BFSI sector has to start, now mattering globally. Their aspirations need to be scaled up much more, and actually, and this is also something that those that give awards to on this BFSI, Economic Times and others, actually, I think it is important that we recognize those BFSI players who actually achieve global recognition. I don't think it is enough for our banks or financial institutions to just basically be good enough at home. I think they have to go and start achieving laurels worldwide and actually get worldwide recognition. So, those leaders that actually contribute to Indian financial sector, Indian BFSI sector, really having a global presence in the global map, those must be the ones that must be recognized. And I think that aspiration has to be set, given what the aspiration that India has set for itself on the economy itself. And here I would specifically emphasize the importance of technology. While a lot of the private sector banks have used data and analytics for retail lending, the use of the same data analytics, etc., for large ticket lending, SME lending, etc., has been very, very low. And this is a problem that must be fixed. And I think here, banks in general and the Indian BFSI sector must, as a human resource practice, think about hiring far more engineer MBAs. I think, having worked myself in the BFSI sector before my PhD and having followed the sector, I find that actually there's a huge preponderance of CA, chartered accountant MBAs, and chartered accountants in the Indian BFSI sector. And I think we need far more engineer MBAs to actually bring this technology-driven banking, especially at for large corporates in the in the BFSI sector. So leaders need to be those that are actually technologically very well trained, not only to be able to come up with models for retail lending, but also models for large ticket corporate lending. And that is the way that the Indian BFSI sector has to go. So I would emphasize that there is absolutely no paucity of potential on this on this side among the Indian entrepreneurs, and it is a matter of mindset now. I think the mindset has to be that one where we are not happy with just being lions at home and lambs abroad. We have to be lions globally as well, the Indian BFSI sector. I think seeking inspiration from other sectors, whether it's the IT, pharma, or and from sport, cricket, Olympics as well. When you have so many different Indians actually showing their presence and actually being globally so good, ranked so good, why can't the BFSI sector have the same aspiration? I think that would be the exhortation, the humble request that I would actually suggest to the entire BFSI sector, that they need to actually bring that mindset, that winner mindset, and have that hunger to really matter globally. And I think that would be something that would really, not only help the banks themselves, but also help the Indian economy, in the process. So in this, I think the media also have to play a key role in, really setting the benchmark. Recognition needs to be given for those leaders who actually really help place India in the global BFSI map. And I think such change in our benchmarks is what is absolutely required if India has to really, in the next decade, become a big player in the in the BFSI sector. Today, for instance, you have about 5 Chinese banks in the global top 100, in the global top 10, top 20 itself. You have so many Swiss banks, you have Swedish banks, and of course American banks. There is no reason why our banks cannot be in the top 20 either. That's what leaders that are from BFSI sector who are listening to this, they need to actually have this aspiration that at the end of the maybe at the end of the decade, 2030, come 2030, many of our leaders in BFSI must be ranked in the global top 20. I think that aspiration will really help them and will help the country as well. And in this process, I think the emphasis on analytics, data, etc., must be very important. And those board members, who are actually listening to this, they need to actually set the HR agenda and say that, the CXO and, CXO -1 as well as the CEO need to be now those that are actually engineer MBA, who understand technology really well And I'll give my own personal example as somebody who's actually trained as an engineer. My BTech thesis was on the application of neural networks to electrical engineering problems, and then coming into finance and financial economics really helped, because that technology background just makes me very, very comfortable with technology. I think that HR practice is something that boards must emphasize as well. Our boards need to have people who are, as not only as board members, people who are really very good with technology. I think it's not enough just to actually understand as an application of technology, but even understand technology really well. We need to have people in the boards, and at the same time, the CEOs, CXOs, and CXOs plus one. Those three levels need to have far more engineers in the BFSI sector. If this aspiration that we've talked about has to fructify. Without change in the HR practices, without this emphasis, I don't think this aspiration of placing Indian BFSI in the global map will happen. I think this is something that all boards and the senior management must be seized of. I wish you all good luck. I'm sure with just change in this mindset actually of being globally recognized, I'm sure our entrepreneurs in the BFSI sector have every ability to be able to actually do that, much like we've done it in every other sphere. So there's no reason why the BFSI sector cannot do it as well. So wish you all very good luck, and I hope all of you enjoy the deliberations at the Economic Times BFSI conference. Thank you very much.